The pyramids are rightly Egypt's most famous monuments. The Valley of the Kings and the tombs within continue to offer new insights into ancient Egypt to this day. Here is the history of this ancient region explained. The grandeur of the pyramids and the treasures locked inside were their undoing. The pyramids and other grave sites became the target of tomb robbers. To prevent robberies, the ancient Egyptians designed pyramids to keep out looters, even filling in hallways with debris. Many tombs even featured curses. This had little impact, as over the centuries all the pyramids were plundered of their treasures, which included the mummies themselves. Part of the problem was that the highly visible pyramids might as well have had flashing "Plunder Me" signs on them. Tomb robbing was a major dilemma, since Egyptian religion believed that the body of the dead needed to be as whole as possible in order to successfully pass into the afterlife. In the case of a pharaoh, he or she needed to have with them all the royal paraphernalia on their journey to the afterlife. The New Kingdom pharaoh Amenhotep I of the 18th dynasty, circa 1541 to 1520 BC, decided that a new location was needed to protect the tombs. So Amenhotep commissioned the building of a special village originally named Set Ma'at, today called Deir el-Medina, in which to construct a new necropolis. The ancient Egyptians chose to build a new necropolis in the Red Land, a term which signifies the reddish sands found within the open desert. This is opposed to the rich arable black land next to the Nile River. The proposed location, opposite the ancient city of Thebes, was carved out of a compact group of mountains near what is now the city of Luxor. Perhaps the pharaohs were attracted to the peak, which recalled the shape of the Great Pyramids, but aside from its fairly remote location, the Valley of the Kings had another security advantage. There was only one entrance to the valley, which would be easy to guard. This is where the Deir el-Medina came into play. It was thought that the new town would help provide security as well as maintain discretion as to where the pharaohs and their treasures were interred.
It's a clear message. Do not mess with Egypt.
Deir el-Medina was called Set Ma'at by the ancient Egyptians, which means the place of truth. It was given the name because the artisans who worked there to build the tombs were supposedly inspired by the gods. Those who lived there were called servants in the place of truth. Because the village was to be set in the harsh environment of the Red Land, it was entirely pre-planned, unlike other Egyptian settlements. It was designed in a rectangular pattern with a dense arrangement of housing to maximize space. Since it was in the middle of the desert, it had no resources to speak of, except what was shipped in. Also, since all the inhabitants of Set Ma'at were tomb workers, there was no agriculture, so they were entirely dependent upon the generosity of the ancient Egyptian government to furnish their needs, which even included water. Despite these difficulties, the village was founded and their artisans began to work with bronze and copper chisels. And so began the long tradition of tomb building throughout the New Kingdom. The construction of these first tombs were overseen by an advisor named Inini. The first pharaoh to be buried in the Valley of the Kings was Thutmose I, the successor of Amenhotep I. The ancient Egyptians believed in an afterlife that was a mirror image of our living world. The physical body was crucial for passage into what they called the field of reeds. Yet before crossing into the afterlife, the soul was thought to be trapped in the physical body and needed to be coaxed out. Egyptian embalmers kept busy preserving the dead through elaborate rituals. The entire process took about 70 days, during which time the dead pharaoh's organs were removed and placed in special canopic jars. Then the corpse was covered with salt to prevent decay. By the time of the New Kingdom, the art and science of embalming had become so advanced that mummies of that period are among the most well-preserved today. This is also undoubtedly due to the well-designed tombs found in the necropolis. The Valley of the Kings is home to some of the best-known pharaohs and elites of ancient Egypt. Seti I, Ramesses II, and the boy king Tutankhamun were all entombed in the valley. Because the ancient Egyptians believed that physical bodies would become reanimated, they stocked the tombs with things needed for both pleasure and practicality. These items included not just treasure, but also food and alcoholic beverages for ghostly royal feasts. Changes of clothes, including fresh underwear, as well as furniture to sit on, were also included. In fact, archaeologists found one of the earliest known sundials in the Valley of the Kings. Apparently, the deceased cared about time as much as the living in ancient Egypt. The dead were also joined by lots of mummified animals. Some were for food. Others, such as ibises, hawks, and crocodiles, were embalmed as sacrifices. Still more, such as cats, baboons, and dogs, were included as pets. In fact, there were more animal mummies than human mummies, although the preservation methods used to embalm animals wasn't as precise. Another major necropolis next to the Valley of the Kings is the Valley of the Queens. So far, over 90 tombs have been discovered at this site. The Valley of the Queens is close to the pyramid-shaped mountain peak and contains a sacred grotto that was probably dedicated to the goddess Hathor. These tombs were used for Egyptian officials before becoming the burial chambers of Egyptian queens, as well as other elite women of the New Kingdom. They are not as elaborate as those found at the Valley of the Kings and consist of short halls and sarcophagi chambers. Notably, these tombs tend not to have much description or decoration, making it difficult for Egyptologists to identify who is buried where. Still, scholars have been able to identify several famous residents of the Valley of the Queens, such as Nefertari, the favored queen of Ramses II. The location was called Taset Neferu, meaning the place of beauty by the ancient Egyptians. The Valley of the Kings was thought to be secured from the robbery that plagued the pyramids. Hopes rested on artisans in the purposely created village of Deir el-Medina to build and care for the tombs. The village was secluded and entirely dependent upon the government for supplies, wages, and housing, so it was thought that the people living there would protect the tombs while also keeping them secret. These assumptions were wrong. Deir el-Medina's supplies were rationed, and everybody received generally the same allotment of goods, including the water that was brought in from the Nile every day. It wasn't luxurious living, and the workers soon gave in to temptation. They broke into tombs and stole treasure, which they sold in the nearby city of Thebes. As the new kingdom wound down, conditions worsened and robberies proliferated, despite punishments which included amputation, torture, and execution. At one point, the situation was so bad in Deir el-Medina that the workers actually staged the first strike in Egyptian history. Throughout the rest of antiquity, the tombs were unused, although they were often visited by Roman and Greek tourists who inscribed graffiti on the stonework. After the rise of Christianity, some of the tombs were even used as Coptic churches. By then, all the known tombs had been ransacked. Interest in the Valley of the Kings virtually vanished until the 18th century when Europeans found and began to explore it. Exploration continued into the 19th century, in part propelled by the successful translation of Egyptian hieroglyphics. It was during this time that the Europeans started designating tombs with numbers preceded by KV. New tombs were being found and explored. This was no mean feat, as some of the tombs were quite extensive. The Theban Mapping Project of the American Research Center in Egypt has created detailed blueprints of the royal tombs. Some, such as KV5, has well over 100 individual chambers. KV5 is the largest tomb in the valley, but it is demonstrative of the intricacies and work put into building them. It also shows the difficulties in exploring them. The most famous and fabulous discovery in the Valley of the Kings occurred in 1922. By the end of the 19th century, archaeologists believed that the valley had yielded all of its secrets. However, British archaeologist Howard Carter suspected otherwise. In 1922, he discovered the tomb of what was then an obscure boy pharaoh of the 18th dynasty, Tutankhamun. To Carter's delight, he found that the seals on the tomb were unbroken. What probably saved this tomb from robbery was King Tut's relation to Akhenaten. After Tutankhamun's death at age 15 or 16, later rulers tried to erase the memory of the blasphemous dynasty. Even though Tutankhamun restored traditional religion, his tomb was later hidden by flood debris. The thousands of artifacts found in King Tut's tomb dazzled not just Egyptologists, but people around the world. Some of these treasures include a gold chariot, a gold mask, and gold sandals. Alongside these glamorous grave goods were the practical supplies. Among the 5,000 objects found in the tomb were baskets of chickpeas, lentils, and dates, as well as bread and meat. What's more, the assembly of statues and other religious paraphernalia enhanced our insight into the worldviews of ancient Egypt. Even though the Valley of the Kings has been excavated for centuries, it is widely believed that there are still major tombs to be found. There are several prominent royals from the New Kingdom whose tombs have not been located, including Ramesses VIII. To find a tomb, archaeologists usually comb through the historical records looking for unaccounted elites to whom no tomb is attributed. David P. Silverman, an Egyptologist from the University of Pennsylvania, explains, "You try to find out what hasn't been discovered and figure out where they might possibly be, and then look in those areas. You never know what you're going to find." Excavations aren't limited to the Valley of the Kings. Of equal but different importance is the work being carried out at Deir el-Medina itself. Macquarie University emphasizes that, although the town wasn't the typical ancient Egyptian village, the unique preservation qualities of the desert's environment have allowed a large array of artifacts to survive to the present day. One of the most important artifacts found are ceramic shards with inscriptions such as poems, caricatures, and matters of business. Through this, we have learned much about how ancient Egypt functioned as a society. As archaeologists continue to work at the Valley of the Kings, new discoveries are still occurring. The first tomb to be discovered after Tutankhamun was in 2006 and dubbed KV63. This tomb, although not believed to be a royal tomb, has encouraged further exploration with the ultimate hope that a tomb like King Tut's may be discovered. In 2019, Live Science reported the discovery of additional mummies and workshops, which provided more insight into the lives of common people in ancient Egypt. Then Nature reported in 2020 that ground-penetrating radar had revealed the possibility of deeper chambers in King Tut's tomb. Archaeologists have speculated that this may be the burial chamber of the famous Queen Nefertiti. Her daughter was married to King Tut, and Nefertiti briefly served as pharaoh. According to British Egyptologist Nicholas Reeves, if Nefertiti was buried as a pharaoh, it could be the biggest archaeological discovery ever. Other Egyptologists, such as Egypt's former Antiquities Minister Zahi Hawass, contend that no major discovery has been found that way. He's continuing his own explorations using traditional methods. Since 1979, both sites have enjoyed the status of being UNESCO World Heritage Sites, with the original declaration stating, "The valley certainly merits recognition and seems to be indisputable from the point of view of World Heritage." The site has therefore been closely monitored for decades. You would think that with this level of scrutiny, the conservation of the Valley of the Kings would be assured. However, a 2019 report by UNESCO on the state of preservation cites erosion, rising underground water levels, and human development as factors which threaten the site. One of the largest threats is tourism. The World Monument Fund notes that 1.5 million tourists visit the valley annually. These tourists are a direct cause of the deterioration of the site. They note, "While every traveler deserves an opportunity to see this spectacular site, measures must stay in place to ensure that eager visitors are aware of the fragility of the ancient tombs." It's a delicate balance between the preservation of these ancient tombs that have survived for millennia and the desire of modern people to look into the past. Hopefully, it can be achieved while at the same time gleaning more insights and treasures from antiquity. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more grunge videos about your favorite stuff are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.